Alright, look what I just picked up. This is not a bike I would typically buy. This is an Apollo, what is it called? AGB 36 250 RX dirt bike. Amazon special. You can buy these for $2,000 brand new. I got this one for $850. It's a 2021, so it's pretty new. Looks like it's barely been ridden. There's a crack right here on the shroud. You can barely tell, but that's the only damage to the bike. I mean, look at the tire tread. Hardly been ridden. So the story on this is that the kid was graduating from high school and he wanted to buy a car. So the mom had this listed up for sale for him. I met with her. She said $1,000 firm. I went there, offered $850, and we agreed on the price of $850. So they said it ran last year before putting it away in storage. Basically said they took it out this year, could not get it to run. So they have no idea what's going on with it. They said they just wanted to get rid of it and buy a car. So here we are. I am the owner of an Apollo 250 RX for the first time ever. I've never owned one of these bikes. I've never seen one in person, not a 250 at least, and obviously I've never ridden one. So today is going to be the review of this thing. My expectations are pretty low. I've heard some bad things about these bikes, and I've also heard some good things. So we'll take a look at it today, kind of compare it to a different 250, and see how it goes. If we can get it running, of course. That's the first step. But yeah, it doesn't look too bad. I was pleasantly surprised when I got there how clean it was. But the main thing is, will it run? First impressions right when I got there, I thought this thing was super small for 250. It's way smaller than the standard 250. So if you guys plan on buying one of these, just remember it sits a lot lower and it's a lot smaller. And I'll do a side-by-side comparison of one of my 125s, and the 125s are way bigger. So it's a small bike. Another thing I noticed was that the seat's like super wide, and it's like really ugly. Like look at the plastics, how wide they get right there. It's a really weird design, and plastics feel really cheap. Everything feels like really, really cheap. I mean, look at the gas tank cap. It's just like really, really cheaply made. And obviously a brand new bike for $2,000, it's gonna have to be pretty cheap. But yeah, let's get working on this thing and see what we find. Alright, just a little walk around of this thing. It's definitely interesting looking. From the side, it doesn't look that bad. But once you kind of rotate over, the shrouds like stick out really far. So it's kind of ugly that way. I think they could have gotten away with making it skinnier, but they didn't. And if you look up from here, you can see how far those stick out like that. And the seat is really wide. So it basically looks really boxy. Look how boxy that is. There's no curvature here, it's just a big rectangle. So it kind of looks goofy from there, from that standpoint. But you can see all the brakes do work. Rear brake, front brake, clutch is smooth. It does have electric start right here. These buttons even feel cheap. The key ignition is right here. Turn that on, see if it turns over. That turns over. Definitely needs a battery here. There's a light bar on it for some reason. Not sure why. I think that lights up. Yep. So you can do some night riding with it. But yeah, overall, it's not too bad, you know, for $2,000 brand new. Definitely boxy and cheap feeling, but other than that, it's not horrible. I've seen worse. But let's get on it and I'll show you guys how big it is. It feels pretty small, and it feels really boxy when you're sitting on it, and suspension's like super stiff. Forks feel okay, the squish there, but the rear shock is pretty stiff. I don't think you'd want to jump this thing too much. So this is an older 1982 YZ125, and as you can see, it's like a lot taller than the 250. And this is a 125, not even a 250. So you can see how much smaller the 250 is. I was really surprised when I got there to pick it up how small the 250 actually was. But it's definitely a lot heavier than the 125. Thing is like a little mini tank. And you can see how nice the lines are on this one. See how it's not too wide. See how the seat kind of curves in a little bit. Really nice. And then you come over to here on this one, and you can see how boxy it looks. This thing's 278 pounds for being this small. So it's definitely not a light bike. So keep that in mind if you guys decide to buy it. It's not super easy to move around. Compared to like a 125, which weighs like 200 pounds. So it's definitely a lot heavier. But let's check and see if there's any gas in here. Yeah, there's some fuel in there. Let's see if we're getting into the carb here. All right, got a little petcock. Does have a filter on there. So what we're gonna do is take the line off right here. See what that gas looks like first. All right, we'll get that little gas line off and see what this looks like. I'm hoping it's just a carb problem, but it could pretty much be anything. Let's see. Oh yeah, gas is coming out. Flowing pretty good. So carb's getting gas. See if there's any water in here. Looks pretty clear. All right, we'll hook that back up. All right. Doesn't look like any water in there. You'd be able to see the separation of the water and the fuel. So that looks pretty good. All right, this is air cooled, so there's no coolant. Let's take a look at the oil next. I'm guessing the standard oil that came in the bike is probably in there right now. So we're definitely gonna change that out. Doesn't feel super thin. So maybe they did change it with better oil. And you can see it's not super clear. Usually these machines that come from Amazon have like a really clear oil in it. It doesn't have that yellow hinge color. And you can see it does have that goldish color. So maybe it is aftermarket oil he put in there. But I believe they do recommend you change it out after the first couple rides. So we'll screw that in all the way, check the level, and you can see it's all the way up. So there's plenty of oil in it. I think there's an air filter in here. And where would that be? Let's take the seat off and see what that looks like. right? Oh, air filter is not under the seat. Looks like all the components are though. CDI box, I'm hoping that's not bad. A little relay. Air filter's right here, so it looks like that cover comes off and we have access to that. Fuse for the battery. And there's a battery right there. There we go. Alright. So it looks like there's a little access port right there. Spider. That should just pop right off, right? Yep. Huh. What the heck? That is interesting. I don't know how you get that out. Like, what's that? That is funny. That is really funny. So, it's just a piece of foam between two pieces of plastic. Basically like an HVAC filter for the house. Let's see if I can get this one out. I mean, they look clean. You know what? We're keeping that one in. I don't know how to get that back in if I get it out here. I think that cover has to come off the top. We are not doing that. So it looks pretty good. It's not super dirty or anything. So I don't think that was the problem with this bike. Get that back in there. So, filters look good. Yeah, it looks pretty clean. So no remnants of any mice living in there. So air filter checks out. All right, we're just gonna take the whole gas tank off. Alright, gas tank's off. The access ports for the valves are right there. Looks like a breather for the oil pump. Carburetor looks like it's pretty easily accessible through there. Got your little rectifier, got the coil. It's over on this side. So let's get that off. We've got a DR8 EA plug in there. Alright, plug doesn't look too bad. You can see there's a little bit of brown on there. We'll check the plug too, make sure that's not fouled. Could definitely be the case. Let's just see if we get any spark here first. Alright, right there is pretty good. So we're going to turn this thing on, use the electric start. I would say that's a really good spark. Perfect. So we don't have a spark issue. I was afraid that was the problem, so we lucked out there. All right, we want to make sure our spark plug isn't fouled. We have our spark plug tester here. Turn it on. And you can see we're sparking good at 2,000 RPM. We'll get this up to 9,000. See what that spark looks like. $4,200. You can see nice blue spark there. There's 9,000. Nice blue consistent spark, so plug is not fouled. That looks really good. So we'll let that run for a little bit. Yeah, looking good. Alright, so far we have one component to get this thing to run. We have spark. Do we have compression? That's the other big one. Let's get the tester in there and check compression. I'll look up the specs and see what this thing's supposed to be at, but if it's low, first thing we're going to check are the valves, because I'm sure the valves get tight on these things pretty quick. Alright, we got a compression tester in here. I'm taking a guess and saying this thing probably doesn't have a decompression mechanism on the cam, but who knows, maybe it does. So we'll check and see. So this thing should have like 150 pounds of compression. If it doesn't have the decompression mechanism, if it does, it'll probably be around 80, I'm guessing. All right, here we go, see what happens. Turn this on. Yeah, that's pretty good. About 180 pounds of compression, so definitely doesn't have the decompression mechanism on there. That is plenty of compression. That's right where it should be for the 250. So we've got spark, we have compression. It's got to be carb related, I would think. All right, before we dig into the carburetor, let's check the valves just to make sure the clearances are within specs. So to do that, just gonna take off the two caps right here. So this is the access port for the crank, so you can spin that, and this is for the timing mark for top dead center. Let's get those off. All right, that came off easy. That came off easy. You can see there's oil in there. So it's getting oil. All right, next, coming up here, we're gonna take these caps off. That one's got a tight clearance right here. Might have to take that off. Yeah, I don't really want to take off that oil line. So we'll make sure the intakes are good. Might leave that on for now. There's a 14 millimeter bolt on there. So now we're gonna rotate this over until we see a top dead center mark through the window right here, which I believe is right there. Yep, that's loose. And we're gonna check the piston. Make sure that's at the top of the cylinder. Yep, you can see the piston's right at the top of the cylinder right there. And this is what that mark looks like. It's right on the flywheel. So that mark lines up with the little groove in the case right there. The little notch. So that's the top dead center mark. And you can check timing as well if you take off this plate right here. So that's how you get that lined up for top dead center. And your valves should be loose. You can hear it clicking. So intake and exhaust should be at 4 thousandths. Let's get our feeler gauge in there and see if those are good. And just by feel, because I've done this so many times, it feels like they're going to be perfect. All right, we've got our 4 thousandths feeler gauge here. fits right in. So we are perfect on the intake valves. And I'm guessing the exhaust valves are fine. Typically the intake valves get tight before the exhaust valves do. But you can see the oil line is preventing that cap from coming off. And I don't want that gasket to break on the oil line and leak all over, so we'll leave that. The compression is perfect, so I'm guessing those exhaust valves are good too. All right, so far we're getting pretty lucky on this thing. We have compression, we have spark, and the valves check out. So let's work on getting that carb out next. You can see it's pretty tight in there, but it looks like one nut, two nuts, and then I think just one clamp through here. All right, that's off. Two nuts, it looks like they're 10 millimeter. See, the whole stud came out. Got that nut off. Take this off. Slides out. That is on there pretty good. All right, got our gasket. Don't come out through the top either. Maybe it can. Wow. How are you supposed to get this thing out of here? There, I think it's gonna come out. Yep, okay. So that was an extremely tight fit through there. So good luck doing the carb if you have one of these. It's pretty tough to do, actually. You'd think they'd make that easier to get out. But then again, they probably don't want you fixing it yourself, so. Huh, interesting. So yeah, they don't want you doing work on these because these are rivets right there. So we're gonna have to drill those out and then put screws in there. So you're not supposed to even have this thing apart. See if there's any in there. There's definitely some in there. It's pretty dark. Yeah, it looks like pretty bad gas. A lot darker than what was in the tank. You can see, so that's been sitting for a while. All right, let's start digging into this carb. So what I'm doing is taking the Dremel tool and we're just cutting slits in here. You can see one was right there. So that our flathead screwdriver can fit in those slits there. So let's do that. One more. I don't know if these are threaded or not. See if that'll be enough to do the trick here. Let's see. Huh? Coming out. Yeah, they're threaded. Should come from the factory like that. They definitely did not want you taking these apart. Alright, let's see what's going on. Oh yeah, she's got some gunk in there. So I'm guessing the carburetor pilot is clogged pretty heavily. Let's take the pilot out. Right here. Hoping that's clogged. Oh yeah. Yeah, that's heavily clogged. So that's got to be the problem right there. Alright, let's take our float out. Alright. Oh, our needle was stuck too. Look at that. That was stuck in there. So it wasn't getting fresh gas to it. So that was the other reason it wasn't running. So we'll sand that out. That seat right there. Yeah, look how much gunk is in there. So that was locking that needle in place there. Alright, main jet does not look clogged. But no wonder this thing did not run. So we'll blow through that as well. Clean that up. Let's see what we're running for main. 109 for the main. Let's see what the pilot was at. 35 for the pilot. So carburetor wasn't too bad. Let's see if the choke's working. Yep, choke's working. That looks good. So that's basically it. That's the whole carb. Not too much to it. The little fuel screw is underneath here. And I might try to take that out too. Might just drill that cap out. See if I can get my screwdriver in there and pry that out. Might just have to leave it in. But it'd be nice to adjust that. So now you can see there's a fuel screw right there. You can get that screwdriver in there. So let's blow this out before any metal shavings get throughout the whole carb. We can get this fuel screw out. SME turns in 1, about 1.5. Turns out. Blow out that passageway. A little spring in there. And there's going to be a little washer with an O-ring. Look how thin that is. The tip of that could easily break off. And just twist that up. Just like that. Get a little WD-40 in there. And just take this and sand that seat out. Because what happens over time is that gas becomes a little sticky. And that prevents that needle from moving up and down. And then no gas can flow in. And it can't shut off the gas either. So we'll clean that out. And you can just buy a new carb for these too. I'm sure they're like 20 bucks online. And what I like to do is take the needle and just kind of sand the sides of it just to get that gunk off. Doesn't take a whole lot. And WD-40 won't hurt that rubber on the end of it. You can clean that off. And now when you put this needle back in the seat, it should easily fit in there and move up and down. So it should fall right out when you tip it upside down. That's a good test. See that? Falls right out. If it gets stuck in there, keep on sanding. Alright, so this pilot is extremely clogged. We tried to blow through it with the air compressor and it didn't unplug it. So what I'd like to do is take just a wire from a wire wheel here and just poke it through there. Just kind of spin it until it pops through, if it will on this one. Don't know if it's going to, it's pretty tight. There we go. And then just kind of spin it on there. And I usually take some WD-40. Since WD-40 is actually a cleaner. Shove that through the hole. And take it back with the wire brush. Just kind of rotate that around. And it might stretch out the hole just a little bit, but it's better than being clogged, right? And you can always adjust the fuel mixture screw to whatever setting you want. So that's pretty free now. And then we'll blow it out with the air compressor, and that should no longer be clogged. All right, we got the carburetor back in. Before we attempt to start this thing up, let's fix the plastics here. You can see there's a crack right there. So let's go from the other side and try to fix that. You can see there's the crack right there. So what we're gonna do is take our plastic welder and just fuse that crack together. Staple on there. Let that get hot. sideways on this one. Go right here with that. That's where that crack was before. Oh. Can't even tell. All right, I think we're ready to attempt the first start on this thing. So the carb was pretty dirty. I think that was a problem, but we'll see. So let's get the gas on. Let's see if this carb leaks. We'll choke it. All right, who thinks it's gonna fire up? Easy, fired right up. So it was definitely the carb. Sounds really good actually. Listen to how quiet that engine is. That is really quiet. Idling perfectly. Wow, that fired up instantly. No knocking from the engine at all. Sounds really healthy. I don't think it has many miles on it. There we go. Yeah, sounding pretty good. No leaking at all. Not too bad. All right, we let this thing cool down for a little bit. See if she fires right back up. Fire right back up. All right, well, we got this thing running pretty good. Let's fix that chain before we attempt to take this thing for the first ride. So you can see the chain was pretty loose when we checked it last. Yeah, that's really loose. Get these tensioners loosen up. Just turn these out. Ready. Pretty good right there. Alright, this thing is all ready to go for the first ride. I was about to pump up the back tire and realized that the tube was blown in it. So it doesn't pump up. We tried and air just gets let out of it. So we don't want to go too crazy and lose that back tire. But this thing definitely needs a new tube. Front tire is good. That pumped up, but rear tire, I don't know what happened. Must have ran over a nail or something. The previous owner must have. But that's why the kickstand doesn't work as well, because the back tire doesn't have any air in it. All right, made it up to the land. Let's test drive this thing. See what it can do today. Get this thing unloaded. Well, first test drive on this thing went pretty well. It runs flawlessly. I mean, doesn't skip a beat, revs out perfectly, starts right up with the electric start. And one nice thing about this bike is it does have the backup kickstart. So if your battery does die, you have the backup kickstart. So that's one thing I do like about the bike. You know, it's more of a trail bike. Suspension is very hard. Going over the rough terrain here, I mean, you can do it, but you can feel every bump. And it's not super comfortable, but you know, it's fine for like trails and light riding, but I would not jump it. It would probably break the suspension for sure. But otherwise, it's not too bad. I mean, you can buy this bike brand new for $2,000, so you really can't expect too much from it. You know, it's very comparable to a TTR 125 in my opinion. I mean, it doesn't feel like a 250. It feels like a 125. I mean, it has pretty decent power, but not like a 250. So very comparable to a TTR 125. Very comparable in size as well. Seat height is right about where the 125 is. And then the power is pretty much a TTR 125. And, you know, considering these things are $2,000, you can buy a pretty nice TTR 125 for that price. The back tire was coming off the rim pretty good, so that was pretty sketchy. I didn't go too crazy with it. It's smooth, the engine sounds good, it's very quiet. So I'm sure the neighbors wouldn't mind it if you had it in like a neighborhood. But at the end of the day, it's still, you know, a Chinese made bike with cheap parts. So I'm sure you could probably get a couple years of hard riding out of this thing before you have to start replacing stuff. Would I buy it brand new for $2,000? Probably not. But yeah, it's a good option for people on a budget that want a brand new bike. My personal opinion, I would go out and buy a used TTR 125 before spending $2,000 on this. But overall, I give it probably a 6 out of 10. Not too bad, not too good. But like I said, I do like the electric start option along with the kickstart. I'm glad they kept both on there just in case your battery dies. That's one really nice thing about the bike. And it's very easily accessible to work on stuff. The engine's very similar to the Japanese bikes. The timing's easy to do. The valves are easy to check. The chain's easy to adjust. I mean, maintenance on this thing's very easy. So that's another, you know, nice thing about this bike. Alright, got her all cleaned up, looking good. So all we need to do is replace the back tire tube and this bike is going to be good to go. All it took was a carb clean and this thing fired right up. Very luckily, that's all it took. This bike is 3 years old, so anything really could have gone wrong. But luckily, the seller was a good seller, didn't lie about the bike, and I'm sure it was running when they put it away last fall. But yeah, pretty clean looking bike. It's very comparable to a TTR 125, and I think, you know, if you could find one for $850, I think it's worth it. But I'd rather have the TTR 125. Overall, not too bad of a bike, but I definitely would not spend $2,000 on it. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the video on me picking this thing up, getting it running, and doing the first test drive and review on it. So thanks for watching, guys. Thanks for subscribing. Stay tuned for next video, and until next time, we are out. What do you think of the bike? Want to check it out? What do you think, bud? He pays no attention to the bike. Oh, there he goes. What do you think of the bike, Ben? He's like, I don't even want to look at it.